All right. Hey, everyone. So, as we continue our conversation about competing internationally and globally, one really important question probably kind of stands out to us in the first place. It's not as, it may not be as prominent of a question for you as you've grown up much more in a global market than some people that came before you, but it was a real serious question asked by a lot of people, especially in decades past, was just this most basic of all questions, like if things are going to be more complicated, if they're going to be different from what we know, why would we even want to enter foreign markets in the first place? Well, quite simply, you all probably have a great understanding of why this is, right? We live in a global world in that sense. I would say that the size of the world is shrinking. We understand the importance of the interconnectivity of doing business abroad. We can often, exploit greater resources and capabilities by expanding our operations. We can, retain a strong position, as it says here, as a key supply chain partner with other businesses globally by entering into our foreign markets. Access to new markets means more people, more revenue potential. Sometimes we can achieve lower costs by either, utilizing this idea of arbitrage or buying low, selling high, or just spreading out our business risk. Sometimes when our markets aren't so highly interconnected, then we can just spread the risk out a little bit. But it is also, important that we understand how competing across these borders can be a unique process. A lot of questions here are unique to multinational competition. And, it can be anything from well, should we just do things as regular? Is there a reason to think that we need to customize the things that we offer in different markets to kind of match local tastes? Or do we standardize those profits? Is it really the same? Do people want the same thing everywhere? I think back, I used to go to school and I lived in Japan for a while, lived in Tokyo. I remember going to Makdo in Japan or to McDonald's in Japan, and they had the like that you see down here, the gurakuro, which is, the Japanese word korokke. This is the Japanese version of a French croquette bun, right? So they had this gurakuro, which is a sandwich that had, like creamy shrimp and cabbage and korokke sauce. And it had, like an egg sauce that they put on it. And they put that between like a toasted bun. And this is a super popular sandwich there. McDonald's understood they're different markets. They have different tastes. So maybe we should do some things differently and match those local tastes a little bit. Maybe standardization isn't our thing, but maybe certain things can be standardized, right? Some things you can always know what to expect. You go to some place like McDonald's, but sometimes we have to sit and think, is the reason people buy our product or service, does that need to be tailored to local tastes, or is it something that could have a more broad, standardized appeal? That's a decision that we've got to make, right? Do we use that same strategy everywhere, right? Just because we've identified that one strategy works in our current market, is that same strategy going to work everywhere? Are there different market conditions? Is the industry different where we're going to be, doing business in this other country? Do we have to try to adjust our strategy to fit the local conditions better? Where do we do distribution? Where do we have our facilities? Where do we gain the greatest advantage from doing that? Do we even do those things in the new market, or do we just do it somewhere else and then ship our products there for distribution? How do we go about these things? What's the cost structure look like? How do we transform all of these resources and capabilities the way we know they should be used within the current market that we're a part of? How do we utilize those things elsewhere and understand how we can use them best so we can get the best market share, utilize our competitively potent resources and capabilities in the best possible way to set us up to be strategically competitive? Complicated questions, but we've got to think about all of these things when we're competing globally, right? I usually show this video just to kind of touch on this idea about why this process is more complex. And what it's about with these changes in different, buyer taste, market size, potential. And I always show this video from Pulp Fiction, if you've ever seen it, when they're talking about, John Travolta's character has just gone to to Europe. I usually show it, but it'll probably block me on YouTube if I showed this to you. So, you know, he's talking about these little differences going places, about buying beer at the, you know, at a movie theater when he's in Europe, or going to what was then Holland, which, you know, obviously no longer a country, but going to Holland, or like the Netherlands, that we call it now, and talking about how they put mayonnaise on French fries and things like that. And they're talking about, oh my gosh, like, you know, he's talking about all these different things about that make Samuel L. Jackson say, oh man, I got to go there. I got to check this kind of stuff out. It's just reflective of these important differences across buyer tastes, right? Differences in population size. It could be income levels between countries. I saw a lot of this when, you know, traveling around Rwanda, and a major difference between our markets in like income levels and other demographic factors that could really drive market size and rates of growth within certain markets. We've got to be aware of all those kinds of things, right? There are differences all over the place, and perhaps the biggest market-related issue is, you know, whether and how much to customize those offerings to match those local buyers' tastes or preferences within a country, or are we going to pursue the same strategy, a mostly standardized strategy amongst different foreign markets, or are we going to tailor those for the different situations? Probably the most important things for us to consider, right? There are going to be widely different conditions when it comes to how we compete successfully, differences in all these different areas. It says here, risks from the shifts of different things like currency exchange is probably one of the most important ones, and governmental policies and regulations about how friendly they are for doing business, how different those things are, how similar they are across these different markets. We've got to keep these things in mind. So the most important one that I really want to, you know, stress here is looking at this idea of who gains and loses during those currency exchange shifts, right? This idea that one of the biggest things that we can utilize to our advantage when doing business different places is considering the difference in the strengths of our currencies and the fact that we often exchange that currency across national lines when we're doing business, right? So let's just give you a good example here, right? If we consider this kind of scenario, we might have a Brazilian manufacturer here. And that Brazilian manufacturing company is going to export to the European Union, and the exchange rate is at this point 4 real to the euro, right? So one real is 25 euro cents in that sense, if I'm saying that correctly, I believe so. But now, suppose that there is a shift in this exchange rate, and it goes from being 4 real to the euro to 5 real to the euro, right? Now, keep in mind, start thinking to yourself, has the real increased in value or declined in value in this situation? And we can see that it has declined, right? Because now 1 real only gets us 20 cents in euros as opposed to the 25 we had before. So in a situation like that, do we think that the Brazilian company should produce more, or like the things that they produce, is it now more or less cost competitive as a result, right? In this situation, it would be more cost competitive, because if the EU markets want to acquire Brazilian products, it's now only going to cost them 20 euro cents when formerly it cost them 25. You see? So knowing this might open up possibilities, like great ways to impact Brazilian exporters, right? Because resultingly, Brazilian exporters are going to experience a rising demand in their group or for their goods in Europe, because it's cheaper for those European markets to get a hold of them. So, you know, as I say here, domestic companies benefit when their country's currency grows weaker in relationship to the currencies of the countries where lower cost foreign rivals have their manufacturing plants. So if I'm going to make something in one country and export it and sell it somewhere else, right? Those domestic companies, we're going to benefit when our country's currency weakens in comparison to the places where we're selling it, right? This is why it isn't necessarily good for domestic manufacturing in the United States when the strength of the US dollar is so high. It's because it makes US products more costly abroad and foreign products cheaper here in the United States. And so that's where they get a leg up on. It then becomes cheaper for us to import foreign goods. We can benefit off of the fact that it was cheaper to create them somewhere else and bring them in, much like the situation we're seeing here from Brazil and the European Union. So just understanding that when you're getting into your business strategy game, you're going to begin seeing that you're going to operate across global markets, and you're going to see that there is an exchange difference and it is going to fluctuate. So continuing to watch about where might be it's smartest for us to produce our product and then ship it elsewhere, sometimes that could be in your advantage. So be looking out for opportunities on how you can, realize an advantage from that differences in exchange rates and where it might be best to produce, and how where it's best to produce might not always be in the same market as you're selling.